Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Week 11 of Big Game Bound. I'm Jack Doles. Here's what we've got worked up for you this week on our playbook. Jared Payton joins us for his NFL analysis. Our big matchups, the Packers and Colts, Chiefs and Raiders, Cardinals and Seahawks. We'll check in with correspondents for all three of those games. Our big guest, Warren Moon, the Hall of Famer, and Kenny White, the Wizard of Oz, joins us from Las Vegas. We'll start with the insights of Jared Payton. He joins us every week from Chicago. Jared, I want to start with a team that really hasn't been relevant in some time. The Miami Dolphins, they're 3-0 since inserting Tua into the starting lineup. Are you a believer?
Yeah, Jack, I mean, you got to be a believer. I mean, just being able to watch this young man and how he progressed, especially, in college to the injury to now being in the NFL, you always saw that he had those intangibles to be, a great quarterback. But right now, you're just seeing flashes of him getting it done when his team needs to. And you love seeing him, especially with the offense having a rhythm and getting, that offense up and down the field. And when you got a guy, a signal caller, and a difference maker at the position, it changes. And I think you and I had this conversation just about Fitzmagic and was it right to be able to pull him? Well, since the last time we talked about that, they're 3-0 with Tua underneath center. So there's something special that's going down in Miami, and I think Tua's only going to get better as he gets more snaps underneath center.
Yeah, he certainly has gotten better with each game. Last year, this team lost their first 7 games. They were historically bad through the first 4 weeks, outscored 163-26. And then they traded off Laramie Tunsil and Minkah Fitzpatrick. How did they get here so quickly?
Well, I think it's been the play of the defense and special teams. I mean, you look at, both just making plays, and the defense still is not rock solid, but they find ways to be able to get it done. You look at the matchup with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, the way that, Miami was kind of no hands down on the defensive line on third down and kind of, making it seem and making it harder for Herbert to kind of figure out where the protection needs to go and how to set the protection, which you saw their ability to be able to get to him. So that's where you're starting to see this anemic defense and just playing well. And when they need to make plays, they're making plays. But that's the reason why Miami is playing so well right now in the AFC East. They are, right there sitting right below the Bills and have an opportunity to keep on winning. When you look at, the quarterbacks and the teams they have coming up, that defense can stay up to par and do the things that they've been doing to some of these young quarterbacks like Justin Herbert that are on the schedule, might have an opportunity to win some more games.
Big blow to the Saints. Drew Brees broke some ribs, suffered a collapsed lung. Last year, they were able to survive without him because Teddy Bridgewater was there. If you're Sean Payton right now, are you going with Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston?
Listen, Taysom Hill is amazing. I think you gotta maybe sit there and go with Jameis Winston. I think he is the guy to the original quarterback. When you're looking at a quarterback form, that's what you want. I think he can come in and run the offense, and I think you leave Taysom Hill doing what he has been doing. I think maybe sprinkling a little bit more of him in the offense and maybe even throwing a little bit more out of the shotgun or even put him underneath center and letting that tape be known. And then down the line, once you figure this thing out, and if Drew Brees is able to come back, when he's able to come back, now you have more tape on there of just the different maneuvers of what you're doing at the offensive side of the ball. But man, I go with Jameis Winston. He's a guy that's won games in the NFL. Let him sit there and throw the rock. I mean, he looked good when he came in to spare Drew Brees. Taysom Hill's an unbelievable athlete. He is the Swiss Army knife when you look at, for offense for the Saints. I think you leave it that way and you keep the Saints rolling.
We've got a 3-way tie for first in the NFC West. Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks. Seattle's trending in the wrong direction. Play the Cardinals tonight. How do you think this division plays out in the second half?
Well, I just feel like the conversations you and I have had, like from the beginning of the year till now, I mean, I was ready to crown, the Seahawks as the favorites and as the champs. But then week by week in the NFL, things can change. And we're starting to see that. And I think back on our conversation, Jack, we were talking about just looking at Murray and what he was able to do and how much that Cardinals offense and team kind of runs off of him. But he's playing at such a high level right now. And I think that's what's so amazing to see is that he's got that comfort level. You can tell it in throwing the ball and also in running the ball as well. And so when you have that dynamic, you make it hard for defenses to kind of game plan against you. And, you know, when you got D-Hop, too, that can go up and get the ball like Michael Jordan and snatch it down over 3 guys, that doesn't hurt either. So I'm going to go with the Cards right now because they just seem like they're surging at the right point. And this is tough. We got to see, you know, what's going on with Seattle, but I'm definitely on this Cardinals train out west.
Yeah, and Murray hit Hopkins for the win in Buffalo against Buffalo on Sunday. How big of a lift does a play like that give a team?
Oh, I think it's huge. I mean, that's one of those grabs that is going to be shown for, you know, years to come, generations to come, because of the throw and then also the catch. But it just shows how both those guys are in sync and they trust each other. And the catch is unbelievable, but I think the throw by Kyler Murray was even more amazing because he's going to his left, trying to throw and not being able to really step into it, but really just the arm strength. I think that's just him, you know, being that baseball player in him, just to be able to flick it with the wrist. But I think it really energizes not just the team, it energizes the fan base. And I think you can start to really kind of feed off of that. And I think that's the reason why you see the Cardinals rolling right now.
One of the marquee matchups in Week 11 is Sunday in Indianapolis, a battle of division leaders. The Colts host the Green Bay Packers. For the Packers' perspective, we call on Bert Griffin. We've seen some separation, Burke, in the NFC North since we last talked. We also saw the Packers struggle to beat Jacksonville with a backup quarterback. Is complacency their biggest enemy going forward?
Well, you know, after that game Sunday against the Jaguars, Matt LaFleur visibly upset at what you could call a power outage or lack of energy and execution by his team against the Jags. But after further review, he admits he might have overreacted just a little bit. Now, it wasn't just one player dogging it here or there, taking plays off. The head coach said, look, we have a positive group and we had a great week of practice. None of that changes, but we just didn't perform. And it's been kind of a conundrum because they're at Lambeau Field and we get it. There's no fans there. So the answer to your question, yes, probably somewhat complacency, but I think consistency has been the bigger issue.
The Colts defense is for real, one of the best in the league against the run. Does this game fall solely on the arm of Aaron Rodgers, or do you see the Packers trying to get this running game going? It's been slumping a bit lately.
Well, I think they've got to get something going on the ground, especially now that Aaron Jones is back after having that strained calf. If you're going to have any success in the NFL, you have to run the ball at least a little bit to keep teams honest. Now, there's been a couple of factors in their recent woes. Tampa Bay, in that loss when they got thumped, they've got a ridiculously good front four and 2 very fast inside backers, which the Packers have struggled with teams that have that kind of personnel. The Vikings game, Dalvin Cook ran all over them, and neither team really could throw the football because of those high winds that we saw. Same goes for the Jaguars game on Sunday. It had rained for about 8 hours prior. Footing wasn't the greatest. Yes, Aaron Rodgers had 300 yards passing, but when you're playing one of the worst teams in the NFL, you really have to look at matchups. And Jacksonville is also pretty stout up front. I think they have to try and establish the run against, like you mentioned, the #1 team in the league right now, Indianapolis.
Yeah, you can't just go by stats. There's always a story around those numbers. I know Mike McCarthy when he was the Packers head coach, there was always a lot of the coach-quarterback relationship. How much better is it with Rodgers and LaFleur?
Well, he was good early on with McCarthy and Rodgers, but sometimes, like any marriage, things tend to fall apart. They were like father and son in a way, where Matt LaFleur is almost more like a big brother and a cheerleader. As of right now, those two seem to get along great, and ultimately they have to because their focus is the exact same thing. They went to the NFC Championship game. The goal is to get back there and take that next step and not only get to the Super Bowl, but win it. The one thing that those guys have, LaFleur and Rodgers right now, I think their age gap is so much smaller that they're willing to feed off each other, and it isn't just my way or the highway.
Burke, you know, 2020 has just been a brutal year for the Packers family. Paul Hornung died last week. Willie Wood, Willie Davis, Herb Adderley. What did these men mean to this organization and to Packers fans?
For the older folks who actually watched them play, they meant a lot. And obviously all Hall of Famers from that Lombardi era, icons in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and around the league. And when they were healthy enough to come out on alumni weekend at halftime, they all got standing ovations. The place was crazy loud. Now, the other 3 previous ones were all on the defensive side of the football, and they were some of the first black players here in Green Bay in the NFL because Vince brought them in and he made the community accept them. Hornung, on the other hand, He was the golden boy, and Lombardi referred to him as the greatest player ever, and that's saying something considering all the guys that he had on his roster. Hornung, by the way, is still the first player in football history to win the Heisman Trophy in college, the MVP in the NFL, and named to both of those football Hall of Fames. I love the scouting report that talked about all of his strengths, running the football, gritty, gutsy, and his only weakness was he likes girls.
Another marquee matchup in Week 11 is from the AFC West. The 8-1 Chiefs visit the Las Vegas Raiders. Chiefs can pretty much wrap up this division with a win. Let's bring in our Chiefs correspondent, Rob Collins from Kansas City. Rob, we've missed you. It's been a while since we called on you. I think the last time we did, the Chiefs lost to the Raiders. How much will that loss and the infamous victory lap factor into the way the Chiefs prepare for this game?
Well, first and foremost, Jack, don't put that loss on me, man. I was just a guest. I didn't have anything to do with it. I don't want that out there in Chiefs Kingdom, but you talked about it, and the Chiefs probably won't say it publicly, but you know that loss to the Raiders. The only loss so far this season is stewing in the back of their minds like a spicy pot of chili, and you know what happens to chili the longer it cooks, right? The spices meld in the meat. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter and festers. Well, that loss has been festering for weeks, and with the victory lap flat bubbling up this week, you know the Chiefs will be reminded of it all week long by us media types. Coach John Gruden said that victory lap was in response to a smart aleck bus driver jawing at the team. So you know Sunday the Chiefs want to throw the Raiders under that very same bus and leave some tread marks along the way.
You a 4-alarm or 5-alarm chili guy? Just curious.
Oh, like 6, man. Hotter the better.
All right, Chiefs had to place both of their starting offensive tackles on the COVID reserve list. How concerned are they that Mahomes won't have them for this game?
Yeah, concerned early in the week right now, and word here in the Kingdom is that Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz are on the list because of close contact, not that they had a case themselves. So we're still not sure about them. We're not sure about Martinez Rankin, but if it is close contact, those guys can be back on the field after 5 days of negative testing. We've seen players do that, specifically Ben Roethlisberger just last week, but Schwartz has been dealing with some back injuries, so even if he's COVID healthy, he may not be healthy to get out there, so there's another hurdle for him, and the Chiefs will definitely need a healthy line to protect Patrick Mahomes. You remember in that last game, 22 of 43 threw his lone pick of the season back in October. He was sacked 3 times. So Mahomes will definitely need that line to give him time to open up the deep routes for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, listen to what you just said, lone pick. And we're 9, 10, 11 weeks into the season. I'm sure that the Raiders aren't happy about having to face the Chiefs off a bye week. Did it come at a good time for KC? And how dangerous is Andy Reid when he has 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent?
Yeah, it came at a great time for Kansas City, and you don't need a degree in facial analysis to see John Gruden morph into Chucky real fast when you ask him about it, because the Raiders have had to play the Chiefs 4 times in 5 years after a bye week, and we saw that Chucky glare already this week. It doesn't lie. Andy Reid's stats, you mentioned Big Red, is big time after a bye. 23-5, including playoffs after the bye, and with that earlier loss and the victory lap we talked about, you know Big Red's cooking up a little something for Sunday night. I imagine he's in the lab right now devising a play called bus driver left as we speak. So the players will be rested. They'll be ready. There's a little revenge coming up for these guys. Even though they may not admit it, it's coming up for them in the desert.
Bus driver left. All right, we touched on this last week with Jared Payton. Andy Reid, 230 career victories, ties him with Curly Lambeau. What makes him such a great coach?
I think Coach Reid's just a great guy. He's just a great individual to be around. And when you listen to him in the press conferences after a win, it's always, they did a good job. The coaches, the players, his staff. After a loss, he puts the onus on himself, saying he has to do a better job. And it certainly, of course, takes talent to be successful in the NFL for a long time, but it also takes some grace, and Coach Reid has plenty of it. And he's quick to share praise with anyone in the organization. Now, in press conferences, we know Coach Reid is a little vanilla, but, you know, sometimes a bowl of vanilla ice cream is both comforting and satisfying all in one bite. That's what you get with Coach Reid.
All right, so we know Green Bay named his stadium after Lambeau. Other than cheeseburgers, what will they name after Andy Reid in Kansas City?
Everything, man. Double slice of cheese for Coach Reed. That's the way he loves it. That's how he celebrated after winning the Lombardi, remember? We could do a full menu for him. Really? Reed's rack of ribs, Andy's andouille sausage, Big Red's Red Hots. I mean, there's a plethora of names out there for the big man, and no doubt he'll have a statue around Arrowhead after he's done. Maybe a stretch of I-70 near the stadium. Heck, if he wins a couple more Super Bowls, the mayor might rename this place Mahomes' City in the county of Reed. I don't know, but I guarantee you this, over the past month or so, plenty of baby boys in Kansas City have been named after Reed after their parents celebrated the Super Bowl win back in February.
All right, next week we're going to break down the Bears-Packers rivalry. What makes Raiders-Chiefs one of the top rivalries in the NFL?
Yeah, it's real simple. They don't like each other. They haven't. They don't now, and they won't in the future. It's always been that way. If you go back to the Madden days, to the brawl back in '86, and, of course, even right now, kids in Kansas City Metro learn two things real early. KC has the best barbecue, and you best not ever root for the Raiders, man. That's what they teach them young here. As for the adults, you definitely know it's Raiders week here in Kansas City. People are a little chippy, and usually people tolerate that random Raider decal you see driving around. But for this week, I guarantee you there'll be a couple of one-finger salutes down I-35. But, you know, the best part about it, it's great that the Raiders are competitive now. Adds a little fuel to the fiery fan bases, man. Sunday should be lit. I can't wait. This is going to be great.
Here's another key game in Week 11, and it'll be played tonight in Seattle. The Seahawks and Cardinals are part of a three-way tie for first in the NFC West. They made it CenturyLink Field. A.J. McCord is our Seahawks correspondent. She joins us now. A.J., how crucial is this game for the Seahawks?
It's critical. You just mentioned that three-way tie at the top of the NFC West. And even more than that three-way tie is the problem for Seattle that they already lost to the other two teams that they're in this tie for. So not only is this the first time that they get to re-see an opponent from earlier this season, but it's a chance to gain a game on a division opponent. And for Seattle, they haven't had a great last couple of games. And so for them to re-enter that national conversation, for Russell Wilson to sort of clear his name a little bit, they've got to come out on Thursday night and show that they are the Seattle Seahawks team that went undefeated for so long at the beginning of the season that had everyone talking about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they've played these last couple of games with third and fourth string running backs. How much has that impacted Russ in this offense?
Third, fourth, and a guy who hasn't played football in a year in Alex Collins. And so the running backs has really been critical, not just in the short down yardage, right? You saw against the Rams 4th and inches, instead of deciding to go for it, Pete Carroll decided to punt it. That's a situation. If you have a Chris Carson, A, you're probably not in that situation, but B, you're going for it. And so for Seattle, this has affected their playmaking or their decision making, their play calling. And for Russell Wilson, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty with the backs who are in the backfield with him, because of course running backs run, they do the screens, they do all those things. But for Russell Wilson, with how much magic he likes to create with DK Metcalf downfield, those plays take time to develop. And on those plays, running backs are the ones who typically come in and block for him. And so Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, those guys know Russ's tendencies. They know how to get where he needs them to be. Someone like Alex Collins, who's been on the squad for a whopping 2 weeks now, DJ Dallas, the rookie, Travis Homer is banged up. Those guys are not as familiar with this system or with what Russ needs to create those plays downfield. So it's impacted the Seattle offense quite a bit.
Yeah, so they've lost 3 of their last 4. Is this a bump in the road, or do the Seahawks have a problem?
I think if they want to prove that it's the first, it starts on Thursday night beating the Cardinals. If they cannot beat the Cardinals, if they cannot make those adjustments from the last time they played to now, knowing that they now have a healthy Jamal Adams, Carlos Dunlap, they're getting Damon Harrison Sr. involved on defense. If they can't make those adjustments and change the results against the Cardinals on Thursday night, I think it's fair to say Seattle absolutely has a problem. If they come out, they win, they make those adjustments, then maybe you can start to attribute it to just a bump in the road.
Yeah, the last time we talked, we were crowning Russell Wilson the MVP, but in the last 4 games, 7 interceptions, 3 lost fumbles. What's up with Russ?
That is the question of the ages. And I talked to Pete Carroll about that on Wednesday. I said, have you seen Russ in a stretch like this before? Because he has so few multi-interception games. And then to have multiple of them in a stretch in the season is even more rare. And so Russ told us on Monday that he just really wants to not complicate things, to just simplify his decision-making. Pete Carroll told me Wednesday that looks like getting back to the things that Russell Wilson is really good at, running the ball, making that magic by escaping the pocket. But the Cardinals are the ones who sort of put the blueprint out there for the rest of the NFL on how to beat the Seahawks. So the Cardinals already know what they need to do. Now it's time for Russell Wilson and the Seahawks to get back to what they do best, to try and win on Thursday night.
I am really excited to bring in our big guest this week. He is a Hall of Famer who I spent many a Sundays watching carve up defenses around the National Football League. Warren Moon joins us from Seattle. Great to have you, Warren. And I can't think of anybody better suited to talk about what's going on in the NFL right now. Do you take a little added pleasure watching Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and the rest of this talented group of black quarterbacks tear up this league?
Yeah, I take a lot of pride in that, along with myself, Doug Williams, and also Randall Cunningham. We played during the 80s and 90s where I think because of our elevated play, really kind of changed kind of the mindset of owners and general managers and coaches around the league, that the African Americans could play this position at a very high level. And now you see the league in very abundance of African American quarterbacks, and they're all doing very, very well. So yeah, I do stick my chest out a little bit to know that I played a small part in that kind of the change of mentality and that change of mindset in the NFL people.
Yeah, it's never really been like this. You started your career in the Canadian Football League. Was that out of necessity?
Basically, it was. A lot of teams in the NFL told me that they weren't going to give me a chance to play quarterback. They wanted me to change positions, and I had never played another position, and I felt like I could play quarterback at a very high level. I had done it in college. I had done it in junior college. I did it in high school. So I just felt like, given the opportunity, I could do it at the pro level. But if you're not given the opportunity, you have to go where you are, and the Canadian Football League gave me that opportunity. So I went there and started my career, and the NFL came after me after a number of years up in Canada. So it worked out well because I got a chance to play with a great group of guys in Canada. We won 5 championships up there. And then I got a chance to have a long career in the National Football League as well. But I would have much rather I would have much rather started my career coming out of college like most guys do.
9-time Pro Bowler once you got to the NFL, and so far the first and only African-American quarterback inducted into the Hall of Fame. What did that mean to you?
It meant a lot, not only to me, but the guys that came before me. There was a lot of guys that didn't get a chance to play the position, just like I almost didn't, because they weren't given the opportunity. There were guys like Marlon Briscoe, who was the first African-American quarterback to start in a game, and the next thing you know, he's changed to wide receiver a couple of years later. There's James Harris, a guy that I really looked up to with the Rams. So all of that came into my thinking when I came in, that yes, I received the honor individually, but a lot of people paved the way for me to get that opportunity, and they were kind of mentors to me and people that I looked up to. And I'm glad I was able to to get to that level, but I never forgot those guys all the way through.
Yeah, Warren, years from now, you're going to have a lot of company. Russell Wilson, Mahomes, Jackson, Cam Newton, Kyler, Tua, Teddy Bridgewater. Which of these players do you think has the best chance to wear that coveted gold jacket?
Well, right now, probably Russell Wilson, because he's further into his career than all those other guys are. Cam Newton, he's got to continue to keep playing well. He had a number of years, probably a 3 or 4 year stretch where he played very well. But the last few years have been marred by injury. So the way Russell has been so consistent, and he's in his 9th year now, and it looks like he's not slowing down, I think he would be a guy that would definitely be Hall of Fame worthy. And I think there's other guys out there right now waiting. I think of Steve McNair, who has passed away, but I think he had a Hall of Fame type career. I think Donovan McNabb is another guy who possibly could be in the Hall of Fame. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I'm the only one now, and I'd like a little bit of company, so hopefully one of those guys will come join me. Oh,
you'll have some soon. You've worked on those Seahawks radio broadcasts. In fact, you have a Super Bowl ring for it. Why hasn't Russell Wilson ever received an MVP vote, and could this be the year he wins it?
I think a lot of the reason is because when he first got here, his probably first 5 or 6 years were mainly a defensive dominated team, with the Legion of Boom and all those guys, and then a very good running game with Marshawn Lynch and Russell being part of that. But over the last couple of years, it's kind of changed, and Russell's become more of a passer of the football and had to take more of the offensive responsibility. So now he's starting to get that respect, and I think you'll see him definitely get some MVP votes this year, if not win the MVP himself. You know, he got off to a great start, but he struggled the last 2 out of 3 weeks, so he's got to get back on track.
Kyler and Tua both wearing the number 1 now, which you famously wore. Why did you pick that number, and what does it mean to you to see those guys wearing number 1 when they are out there playing on Sundays now?
You know, it's a number that I picked because that's where I always wanted either our team to focus, that's where we wanted to finish as a team, and also it was something in my mindset that I wanted to finish as a quarterback. I wanted to be the best. So putting that number on me kind of was a constant reminder to our football team. Every time they looked at me as one of the leaders on the team, it reminded them that that's where we want to focus, to be number 1. And it always made me focus on wanting to be the best quarterback that I could be. So that was the main reason I wore the number. And it's an honor to have these guys wear it, especially if they're wearing it, because that's the number that I wore.
Kenny White is the Wizard of Odds. He's an odds maker, sports market analyst. You can see him on CBS Sportsline. He's also the publisher of Kenny White's College Football Power Ratings. You can get it in a PDF or a 3-hole binder. And he predicts the final score for every college football game. Basically tells you what the odds and the total should be for every game. He joins us every week from Las Vegas. Kenny, what would the scene have been like in a packed sports book when Kyler Murray hit DeAndre Hopkins with that Hail Mary that was such a big swing play?
Yeah, that's like an NCAA March Madness game with a 3-pointer at the buzzer, winner game. But no, we're not. That's not true, because you know what? The books would have been going crazy. But when the Cardinals took a knee, the awes and the sighs would have maybe outweighed the roar of the crowd, because most people, Jack, had a ticket of -2.5 on the Cardinals. So they ended up thinking they were going to get a big win, and they ended up getting a loss.
All right, Patriots, Vikings, Lions. Which of these 4 and 5 teams has the best chance of sneaking into the playoffs?
Yeah, the Vikings are the most talented of the 3. I still think they're a top 12 team, about number 12 in the NFL. Lions would have the second best chance. I'm going to say the Patriots still in the bottom part of the NFL. I think they just pulled off a big upset this weekend. I don't think they can sustain that. I just don't think they have the talent. So I'll take the Vikings with the chance to make the playoffs.
All right, so the first time the Chiefs and Raiders met, the Raiders beat them in Kansas City. Raiders have won 3 of 4 since, but they're a 6.5-point underdog to the Chiefs at home. How do they settle on a number like that, and who do you like?
Yeah, you know, Jack, it's all power ratings, and you adjust those power ratings each and every week. Now, the Raiders have only been a favorite twice this year, twice in 9 games. That's it. And both times they were only a -3-point favorite. The Chiefs, if you just look at their points for and points allowed on the year, they average 11.5 more points than their opponent. The Raiders average 2 more points than their opponent. If you cross-reference both and gave a number to each one, you'd come out with 29.3 to 24.3. A 5-point win for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have revenge. They lost at home, you mentioned. That's usually at least a point and a half to the line. Just by using the cross-reference points scored, points allowed, I can get the Chiefs -6.5. I do like the Chiefs, though. My power ratings say they're 10 points better than the Raiders, and I think they get a big win this weekend.
Clearly, Vegas does not believe in the home team right now. Another line that caught my eye came from the college ranks. Indiana's 4-0. It seems like something magical is happening in Bloomington, but they're a 20-point underdog against Ohio State. Are you tempted?
You know, it's right. I think it's right on the line. You know, when you look at the talent these two programs have, over the last 6 years, Indiana has had 9 players drafted in the NFL, 9 in 6 years. Ohio State had that many. They had 10 last year. They've had 50. So there's a big talent difference between the programs. At the beginning of the year, Jack, I had a 24.5-point difference between these two teams. Right now, I'm down to 19.5 points. I really like what Tom Allen's doing. He's very enthusiastic with his team. He's well prepared. The question mark will be Michael Penix. Can the sophomore left-hander get the job done against a top-tier talent like Ohio State? If he takes care of the football, I think Indiana covers. I don't think they can win the game, but I think they can cover the spread.
All right, last thing, Kenny, can you recall a turnaround like the one that's taking place in Miami? Because it was 13 months ago. I would have bet the farm they were 10 years and a new owner away from having a chance to make the playoffs again.
Yeah, they were surprising last year. They had a nice turnaround after an 0-7 start. They went 5-4 down the stretch. But 2018, Indianapolis was 1-5. Andrew Luck was just coming back from missing a year of injury. They finished the year 9-1. Their last 10 games made the playoffs. And the 2015 Chiefs, they were 1-5. Finished the year 10-0 to go 11-5. That was Alex Smith at quarterback then. So it has happened. Might be a great story, though. Maybe even better than those two if they do run the table to finish the season.
That will do it for Week 11 of Big Game Bound. A big thank you to our guests, Jarrett Payton, Bert Griffin, Rob Collins, A.J. McCord, our big guest, Hall of Famer Warren Moon, and Kenny White. For our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and the rest of our crew here in Grand Rapids, I'm Jack Doles. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the game. Starts tonight with a big showdown in the NFC West. Cardinals at Seahawks. See you again next week on Big Game Bound.